This is an example of the newspaper comic strips in the newspaper here in America. And most newspapers you'll buy have some type of comic strip in it. And before comic books, this was the big deal. If you were making a comic, if you could get your stuff into a newspaper, syndicate it, that's where the big money was and the prestige. And comic books started out as nothing more than taking these newspaper strips and then repackaging them into a book-length format called a comic book. But the comic book in its beginning wasn't looked upon as it's looked upon now. That's the early history. It was only later on, when they needed new material, that they paid the artists and writers to make comic books with their own stories and not reprints. And that enabled actually what we know today's comic books, which are much more versatile. You're much freer to draw. You know, you're very limited in space on these type of newspaper strips. Very limited art space you have, very limited writing space. We know the comic books today is popular, but these were the early days. Since you don't need many panels, if you could do the work as some of these artists do, like they might work 3 or 4 days a month and make a month worth of strips, then they're free the rest of the month because they fulfill their deadlines. And that's pretty cool to know that you only got to work a few days a month if you could make all the stuff you need for the whole month. The bad thing is you have deadlines, and when you're working in a newspaper, you have to provide the publisher with the comic strips that they expect, when they expect it, and there's no such a thing such as a delay, because if you're delayed and you can't provide, then you're probably going to be out of business in syndication and lose all that money. Because when they expect something done, these companies, they expect you to be a professional and you got to get the job done one way or another. So that's the downside, is you're much more pressured to fulfill your end of the bargain. But just a little talk about the early days of comic books. Hope you liked it. Subscribe and talk to you later.